From ABC, this is a special one-hour edition of World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening. We begin tonight with some of the basics. The Iraqis said today that Allied airmen who've been captured will be used in an effort to prevent attack on some Iraqi targets. President Bush says it will not change the war. There have now been almost 5,000 combat missions against Iraq and occupied Kuwait, but the Pentagon concedes it is having a hard time with the weather, which the generals and the admirals also cite as the reason for some contradictory reporting on the effectiveness of the overall campaign. We begin with ABC's Bill Redeker, who is in Saudi Arabia.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, launch.
The 5-day-old air campaign concentrated again today on targeting and eliminating Iraq's Scud missile launchers. Military estimates of how many launchers Iraq has and how many have been knocked out vary.
In accordance with our campaign plan, we will continue and have aggressively pursued launchers when we find them and when we fix them and when we can attack them, and we'll continue to do that.
But low clouds again slowed down the Allied air punch. The sortie rate dropped 50% in the last 24 hours. One reason why flyers have been unable to track down and destroy Iraq's mobile launchers.
Not much going on. The clouds kind of affect a lot of things that's going on today, so hopefully it'll clear out and be able to get some ordnance back up there.
Weather has not affected the bombing of fixed targets from high-altitude bombers. The Air Force showed off this direct hit, and the Navy launched this smart missile at an industrial target. The video was broadcast from a TV camera mounted in the missile's nose before it hit. Finding mobile Scud launchers is more difficult because pilots say Iraq is moving and hiding them during the daytime and then firing them at night. In the last 24 hours, repeated barrages of Scud missiles aimed at the capital, Riyadh, and at a large U.S. airbase here in Dhahran. In all, 10 Scuds fired in 3 hours, the most concentrated attack since the war began. The American command said Patriot air defense missiles intercepted all but one, which crashed into the sea. On the streets and in the hotels here, there was panic and fear that the missiles might be carrying deadly nerve or mustard gas. But the missiles carried no chemicals. Falling debris from the intercept pockmarked this patch of asphalt paving. And in Riyadh, the military would not say what caused this hole in the ground or damaged this building. Despite today's bad weather, this A-10 tank killer crew was able to fly cover for a rescue mission in Iraq, where an American fighter pilot was rescued.
You know, it's kind of exciting the fact that the down pilot is going to get rescued. You know, it's really exciting the fact that you know their guy can punch out and we can go in and grab him and bring him back to safe ground.
In the desert, where Army and Marine units are moving north, Scud warnings are keeping soldiers at a high state of alert, and the stress of sleepless nights is beginning to take a toll on troops who are moving tons of equipment over the vast desert.
You cannot imagine how large it is. Hundreds and hundreds of vehicles, airplanes, and all the ammunition and fuel and water to support all that is bigger than you can possibly imagine.
Near the Iraqi border, M1A1s, the Army's best tanks, were firing their weapons, enabling gunners to adjust their sights and get used to the kick of the 120-millimeter gun they will use if a ground war is necessary after the air campaign.
The more they take out, the less we have to take out. And in our opinion, if anybody takes out anything before we get there, we're happy.
Give us a round on the way and send it. Blue 1, a blue 3.
The Army's Apache helicopter also fired live rounds. Apache and M1A1 would support each other in an air-land battle against Iraqi forces.
Earlier tonight, there was yet another Scud alert here. It lasted about 10 minutes later, and then it was canceled. A lot of people thought that it was a false alarm, but the Pentagon later said it was not. A Scud had entered Saudi Arabia, but not over land. It landed in the sea, 60 miles north of here. Peter?
Bill, a couple of things to talk about, the weather and the land war, if it comes. How bad is the weather as seen from your perspective there?
Well, you can see by the way that we're dressed this evening, it's quite warm, and there's a lot of ground fog, humidity. The ground is quite wet. We are told, however, that the weather is supposed to improve by tomorrow, And maybe that'll be good news for those who are trying to fly those missions.
I just wanted to know how complicated it was to fly the missions today from your perspective.
Well, what we heard was that the sortie rate was cut in half, and a lot of flyers were coming back with their munitions, mainly because they couldn't see the anti-aircraft fire, which they try to visually observe when they go into that theater. So apparently it was difficult today.
Given the confidence, the public confidence we've heard about the effectiveness of the air campaign from the Pentagon, is there some thought there about just keeping it on and on and on and delaying the land war?
I think that's fair, but at some point you've got a couple of problems that emerge. One, you've got something called mean time between failure rate, which is how long aircraft can fly on these high rates of sorties without having to be repaired with new jet engines, instrumentation breakdowns, and so on. So at some point you reach sort of a point where you can't continue flying as much as you start.
There were a lot of breakdowns before the war actually began. Do you have any sense of the effect on the machines of the desert now that war has begun?
Well, the weather's changed considerably, as you're no doubt aware. I mean, there are no longer the dust storms because we've been in a wet period. It's not as hot as it once was. It's now cooler. So I suspect, if anything, the equipment's probably working a bit better than anticipated.
Okay, Bill Rediker in Eastern Saudi Arabia tonight. Thank you. The announcement from Baghdad this morning should have come as no surprise, but it was nonetheless a jolt. Iraq claimed that it was holding more than 20 Allied airmen and would use them as it had used many of the hostages before the war. They would be sent to civilian, economic, education, and other targets throughout the country as a would-be deterrent to Allied bombing. Iraqi television showed some of the flyers it holds, including 3 Americans. Here's ABC's Gary Shepard.
Lieutenant Colonel Cliff Acree.
U.S. Marine Corps Lieutenant Colonel Cliff Acree was the first of 7 Allied pilots who appeared last night on Iraqi television. He told an off-camera interviewer he had been shot down by a missile during a reconnaissance flight over Kuwait. Acree barely moved during the interview and appeared to have a broken or bruised nose.
My name is Lieutenant Jeffrey Norton Zahn, United States Navy.
Zahn said he was from the aircraft carrier Saratoga, operating in the Red Sea. His face was puffy. He had cuts all over it and seemed to have 2 black eyes. He spoke in halting, stiff phrases and said to tell his family he was being well treated. The 3rd American was Marine Corps Warrant Officer Guy Hunter, who said he had been shot down over southern Iraq. Hunter had a badly swollen left eye and a noticeable bruise under it. The Iraqi TV broadcast also showed pictures of a Kuwaiti pilot, an Italian, and 2 British airmen, including this man, who was unable to hold his head up straight. It is not clear whether the pilot's bruises came from being beaten or from the effects of having ejected from their planes.
My name is Flight Lieutenant Peters. I'm British.
Last month, Saddam Hussein released more than 1,000 hostages, some of whom had been used as human shields. Now, Allied prisoners of war will be used as human shields, Radio Baghdad says, because of the bombing of civilian areas. Gary Shepard, ABC News, Amman.
It has been ABC News policy for some time not to air the comments of any hostages who very clearly said what they said under pressure, including, as we had one experience, perhaps at the point of a gun. That's why we have limited what you've just heard from the captured pilots. In Saudi Arabia, one Air Force pilot on active duty described how he and his friends felt about the appearance of those pilots on Iraqi television.
The statements that they read were obviously one that they did not write themselves. It's obviously one that was made under great duress. There's no doubt about that, and I know that's true because those guys are Americans.
The families of the prisoners could take some comfort from knowing they were alive. Mary Hunter, the wife of Chief Warrant Officer Guy Hunter, released a statement saying, "I have been a Marine wife for 14 years and I am very proud of my husband and all that he has done." President Bush, who has been studiously cool most of the time since the beginning of the crisis with Iraq last August, was visibly angry today on learning of the mistreatment of the Allied airmen. At the White House, ABC's Britt Hume.
Fighting a cold, the president returned early from Camp David with his guest there last night, House Speaker Foley. He headed straight for the microphones to add his voice to the chorus of U.S. protest against Iraq's televised display of captured U.S. airmen and the threat to use them as human shields.
This is not going to make a difference in the prosecution of the war against Saddam. It's not going to make a difference.
Note that he called it the war against Saddam for the first time. Mr. Bush appealed for proper treatment of the airmen, which he said they weren't getting. And he said Americans are angry about it.
So it is backfiring. If he thought this brutal treatment of pilots is a way to muster world support, he is dead wrong.
As he left, the president answered one question. Would Saddam be held accountable for the prisoners?
Will he be held accountable?
You can count on it.
That was reinforced by a State Department warning today that, quote, Iraqi individuals who are guilty of war crimes are personally liable and subject to prosecution.
That, in turn, raised anew the question that came up here last week when the White House said Saddam must surrender. The word surrender was retracted, but the situation now implies just that. With the conquest of Iraq, the capture of its leaders, and war crimes trials, which could only involve a military occupation. All things the administration says it's not interested in. Peter?
Britt, which takes us, of course, beyond the liberation of Kuwait, which is the stated objective of the Bush administration. Do you detect a widening of the aims there?
Well, Peter, we've been inquiring about that vigorously today, and I was told today and over the weekend as well by senior administration officials, excuse me, a little windy here, that if Saddam Hussein pulled out of Kuwait, said he would pull out of Kuwait, and began to do so in massive numbers, the United States would stop the war. When that, of course, makes you wonder about what happens to the war crimes. And I'm told that officials in the government are trying to figure out right now what they would do about that then.
Okay, Britt Hume of the White House, thank you very much. As of now, getting Iraq out of Kuwait is still stated policy. We have heard today both President Bush and the Defense Secretary refer to the Geneva Convention today. It is actually the Geneva Conventions. There are 4 of them. International treaties signed in Geneva in 1949 which deal with the protection of civilians in wartime and the care of the wounded as well as military prisoners of war. ABC's John Martin tonight on the law and the reality when a soldier falls into enemy hands.
American troops are trained to expect mistreatment if they are captured, despite the Geneva Conventions. Under those rules of warfare, they are required only to give their name, rank, serial number, and date of birth. Under U.S. military rules, American prisoners must, to the best of their ability, resist making any other statements. In Vietnam, many American POWs were tortured and forced to denounce their country. They were supposed to be disciplined. But now, if they are forced to make statements against their will, American prisoners do not face discipline. Senator John McCain was a fighter pilot held more than 5 years by the North Vietnamese.
I'm convinced that these men are resisting to the best of their ability, that they are being mistreated by the enemy, and they're being subjected to outrageous treatment.
The Geneva Conventions were signed by the U.S. and Iraq and 154 other nations. They forbid public displays of captured soldiers, holding them up to ridicule, threats or torture to gain information, or forcing prisoners to criticize their own country or its policies.
You may not coerce them to say things that they don't wish of their own free will to say, and you certainly may not also deploy them in some form of human shield in that way.
The United States says that unless Iraq stops mistreating prisoners, it will ultimately prosecute Iraqi leaders as war criminals. American units also have prisoners of their own, and they say they're well treated. 23 Iraqis were captured this weekend on oil platforms off Kuwait. They were held 12 hours aboard the USS Nicholas.
I have a couple Arabic speakers, so I told them they were now prisoners of war in the United States of America. They'd be treated with dignity and respect. They'd be fed. They'd be attended to medically. All they had to do was cooperate.
The Iraqis have been transferred to a POW camp in Saudi Arabia, which the Americans insist is being run under conditions approved by the Geneva Conventions. John Martin, ABC News, Washington.
And now trying to assess the campaign overall. In Washington today, the Pentagon spokesman himself spoke of the enormous frustration in that building because of what he said they do not know about how the war is going, which is the same case for all of us. Part of the problem, as we've said, is the weather. Here's ABC's Bob Zelnick.
U.S. military officials have displayed spectacular footage of early precision hits. More recently, there have been claims that the operation is proceeding according to plan, but almost no details. The problem dominated this afternoon's Pentagon briefing.
How can the operation be proceeding as planned if you don't know what damage you've done? And why is a television station still on in Baghdad? Because I presume that would be a target.
First, we know what our campaign is, and we know generally what success we're having and achieving. You're asking for very specific information on targets, which I am not prepared to give you.
Not necessarily specific.
Can I finish answering the question? We feel that we are releasing as much information as we can that is reasonable.
Part of the problem is that as the bombing campaign shifts from big fixed targets like power plants to concealed or camouflaged battlefield targets like tanks and command bunkers, the damage is harder to assess. This is particularly true in bad weather. For most of its damage assessments, the U.S. relies on satellite or reconnaissance plane photographs. And while it does have radar imaging and infrared equipment not affected by clouds, these systems are not as clear and take longer to interpret. On Scud missiles, officials have given different accounts on the number of Iraqi launchers and whether all fixed launch sites have been destroyed. And Pentagon officials have modified their early suggestions that Iraq's high command was having great difficulty communicating with officers in the field.
And what we're monitoring right now, Saddam Hussein, or the command element, I can't say Saddam Hussein himself, but the command element is still in control of military activity in the country.
Confusion is present in any war, but here it is compounded by the great distance between reporters and the action and the cautious way in which the military command has spooned out information. Peter?
Bob, help us with another seeming contradiction as to whether or not the Allied air forces have air superiority.
Well, there were contradictory statements between General Schwarzkopf and Secretary Cheney on that. Air superiority is really defined as the ability to fly in over opposition territory with no interference from their air defense systems or from their aircraft. On that definition, the U.S. has not yet achieved air superiority.
Tell us about also this business back and forth today about the Iraqis having decoys and whether or not the U.S. is really hitting intended targets.
Well, the Iraqis have several decoys that appear to observers from afar to be Scud missiles, particularly mobile Scud missiles. And apparently the U.S. has hit a few of these and at one point may have counted some among their claimed kills. And they're trying to address that problem and get a more accurate count on the mobile missile launchers they've destroyed.
In part, I think because the Scuds are being seen on television, in some cases live, and certainly in considerable measure because they've rained down on Israel. I wonder whether or not the Scud has distracted the press to some extent from the overall campaign.
I think it's even more important that it's distracted the military, because the military keeps saying that taking out Scuds is their highest single priority, and yet it's one of the lowest military priorities because of its military inconsequence.
Okay, Bob Zelnick at the Pentagon, thank you very much. Another reason it has been difficult to know how much damage is being done by U.S. forces is because the Iraqis have completely eliminated freedom of reporting on the ground. And so we are limited to the few eyewitness reports from people who've been able to get out of Iraq, as well as a limited number of phone calls. ABC's Sheila McVicker reports from Amman in Jordan.
Some of the very limited information about what is happening in Iraq is coming from people arriving at the border in overloaded trucks and packed buses. Iraqi citizens are prohibited from leaving, and so far only a few hundred Egyptians and Sudanese have made the journey. Transportation is expensive. Some of these people pay the equivalent of $2,000 for a bus ticket. Many were working in Baghdad, a city they describe as now without water, electricity. Are the shops open? Do people have food to eat? Did you have food to eat?
No.
Haj Mansour and his family left their home in Fallujah, 60 miles west of Baghdad. He was terrified for his children. The town was under almost constant bombardment. On Saturday, he says, the post office and telephone building was hit. My neighbors said 8 people died. That was near our house. That's when we decided to leave. So after 13 years in Iraq, they are returning to Egypt with a washing machine and 2 television sets. Yesterday, most of the remaining foreign journalists in Baghdad were ordered to leave. They had witnessed 4 days of bombings. Friday afternoon, on the outskirts of Baghdad, one of Iraq's largest refineries was attacked. Journalists say the flames shot more than 100 feet into the sky.
Baghdad is blacked out at night, and the light given by the fire was so great that you could probably have read a book by 8 miles away.
Marie Colvin writes for a London weekly newspaper. She saw a cruise missile attack.
One came again right toward the Rashid Hotel, and you could see the thing came right towards us, and then it made a right turn, and as if it was following a street map, made a right turn, dived around the hotel and hit what I think was the old Parliament building about half a mile away.
In an interview just after he arrived in Amman, Brent Sadler of Britain's Independent Television News described what he saw on the road to Jordan.
I did see parked up on the roadside 4 Russian-built MiG jet fighters. Clearly the Iraqis are using the roads as emergency landing strips. Further on beyond that, I saw a Scud missile and its launcher and its command and control vehicle parked up on the side of the road that appeared to have either run out of petrol or to be having an engine failure.
The people who have left Baghdad say there was no sign of panic. Government television still functions on schedule. Newspapers appear every day. The headline on today's Ba'ath Party paper reflects Saddam Hussein's determination. It said, "The war is just beginning." Sheila McVicker, ABC News, Amman.
And now joining us from Washington is our military analyst, Tony Cordesman. Tony, can I start with the information war? You've worked both sides of the street, military and now some journalism, or at least analysis for us. Are we getting it right, or are we getting it wrong with the Pentagon?
I think the Pentagon is giving it to you straight. I think it is absolutely true, however, that one of the key goals of this campaign is to confuse and isolate Saddam Hussein from his ability to understand what's happening. And any information, any quantitative data that is given to the media does, in fact, help him conduct the war effort.
And do you say that they're giving it to us absolutely straight. Do you think they've got a lot more than they're giving the public?
I'm certain they have much more. You can't conduct the kind of maneuver that's taking place to get our ground forces ready. You can't shift between what are thousands of sorties a day without having information on changes in the target, without very good estimates of what your damage effects are, without very precise estimates of which air bases have been hit. But let me go back briefly, Peter. Even the data that they gave out at one point about how many Patriots it took to kill a Scud was data which ultimately could help Iraq.
And when they say that they're having real trouble with the bomb damage assessment because of the weather, what are we supposed to interpret?
Well, I think that that's almost unquestionably true, although certainly they could give us far more data at the risk of seeing it go to Saddam Hussein. But remember, out of 1,000 sorties, perhaps, let's say, 800 are attack sorties. They're not going to waste multi-million-dollar airplanes and weapons that cost perhaps $500,000 a copy unless they're very confident that that can get in and attack a target that is militarily valuable. And we are talking thousands and thousands of targets, some of which have to be hit again and again. We're now at 8,100 sorties. We might find ourselves at over 20,000 before the major phases of the land battle begin.
I was going to ask you just this sense of when the air war begins, or the air war ends, or when the land war begins. Do you have any feel for that at all, listening to the briefing?
Well, listening to the briefing, I think one thing is obvious. We have the initiative in the air. Whether it's air superiority or not, we can use our aircraft as long as we think we can keep finding valuable targets and kill them before we commit the land forces. And therefore, I think we're going to wait on the weather. We're going to wait on damage assessment. We may watch this go on into early February, under the worst cases, perhaps even mid-February, as we let air power take what is an inevitable toll to weaken, undermine, and almost destroy the cohesiveness of Iraq's forces.
Okay, Tony Cordesman of Washington, thanks for taking the time. In a moment, we're going to take a closer look at the Patriot missile, which has proved itself in battle, and the high cost of all that technological superiority.
For years, we've been telling you how the four-wheel drive Subaru helps the U.S. ski team get to their events early. Yet at the 1989 World Championships, Norway, France, Italy, and Sweden all got there before us. How'd they do it? That was the year we lent them each a Subaru. Hurry in for double discount savings at your local Subaru dealer today.
What traits do you look for in a financial firm? A herd mentality? Unsteadiness? Complacency? Or do you look for strength? Stability? Knowledge of the world? What traits do you look for?
In the absence of reporting on the ground, it is a story of high technology, and one of the huge success stories of the American effort in the Gulf so far is the success of the Patriot missile. At one point, it was 6 years behind schedule, more than $2 billion over budget, and so unreliable in its early tests, it was nearly canceled. Today, the stock of the company that makes the Patriot, Raytheon, gained more than 4.5 points on the stock market. In Saudi Arabia, ABC's Sam Donaldson has been to see the Patriots and the men who launched them.
Deadly streaks of fire in the night sky. A Scud missile is heading toward Iran in eastern Saudi Arabia, and rising to intercept it, a U.S. Patriot missile. Bullseye. No more Scud. And here is where the Patriots came from, this battery of launchers. On the edge of the air base they were sent to protect. The men who operate them feel the responsibility.
It's awesome when I think about it, Sam. I hate to use that overused word, but yes, I know a lot of people are counting on us.
Lieutenant Colonel Lee Neal commands the battalion that knocked down the Scuds on Sunday night. He and his men never see the Patriot missile they use. Manufactured by Raytheon, it looks like this. Only a little over 17 feet long, carrying only a little more than 200 pounds of high explosive.
It comes from the manufacturer ready to go.
It arrives at the missile battery site sealed in a rectangular canister, 4 of which are mounted on one launcher, which looks like a Graham cracker box. Captain Joe De Antona says when this launcher of his fired last night, you knew it.
It's very loud, and it's also very quick. The system, the launchers itself will take off, and you probably don't hear the noise until the missile is well on its way. It just travels that fast.
Here's the way it works. The Scud is fired on a high parabolic trajectory toward Tehran. It is immediately picked up by U.S. surveillance radar, and the Patriot's command radar, which can handle up to 5 targets at once, gets ready to track it. It takes the Scud 6 to 7 minutes to arrive. The Patriot's computer, hidden under this camouflage netting, automatically fires the Patriot missile at the correct instant and guides it toward the target. Here's the way it looks in the test range. And here's the result in the night sky over Saudi Arabia. The personnel of the Patriot Battalion we visited watched a videotape of their handiwork with satisfaction. Captain, you know, we've all been told that nothing works perfect in life. And yet so far you're batting 1,000.
Yeah, I like to relate back. I tell my soldiers, everybody knows Vince Lombardi, and you always need a little bit of luck, but Vince Lombardi always said luck is when preparation meets with opportunity. And that's kind of the motto that we have here at the battery.
Now it's another night, and the Patriots are ready. Lombardi would be proud. Sam Donaldson, ABC News, in eastern Saudi Arabia.
Well, as you surely heard, the Patriot missile is just one of the many new high-tech weapons being used for the first time in battle, and with success. There is another new piece of technology that is making it much easier for American fighter pilots to get to their targets. Here's ABC's Kathleen Delaski.
With paper maps, rulers, and tedious calculations, it takes a pilot up to 8 hours to plot a single bombing mission. But this past week, U.S. Air Force pilots used a new device for the first time in combat. It allowed them to chart and even practice their bombing raids very quickly before leaving the ground. This is file footage of the new computer called the Mission Support System. It contains detailed satellite photos for every inch of Kuwait, Iraq, and Saudi Arabia.
Here are some large oil storage tanks.
In Washington, Brian Cooper from the company that makes the software gave us a demonstration. The pilot pulls up a map of the enemy territory. The red area tells him where he would encounter the most enemy radar, and it charts the safest course.
This is what the pilot would actually see flying towards the target.
Cooper says the pilot can choose any altitude and try out the raid, almost like a video game.
Now you can see the target. Now it's hidden behind this next hill. We'll fly over that, and now we can clearly see the target for the rest of the run.
So he knows he has to wait till he clears that hill before he can...
That's correct. And he may actually pick a different direction for a better advantage.
Defense analysts say this is the next best thing to practicing in enemy skies. And with the computer's help, a pilot can avoid errors of arithmetic and improve his accuracy.
We know where to go. We know how to get there. Mapping is going to give us an advantage that nobody else in the world has ever had in warfare.
The Air Force will not discuss the new mapping system now that war has started, but one Air Force source says the pilots in Saudi Arabia are screaming for more. Kathleen Delaski, ABC News, Washington.
All of this new technology, of course, does not come cheap. If the first days of the war are any indication, the $10 billion pledged by America's coalition partners is not going to be nearly enough to cover the cost. ABC's Bob Jamieson.
Every time the Navy fires a Tomahawk cruise missile against Iraqi targets, it costs the taxpayers $1 million. So far, the Navy has fired at least $220 million worth, or more than 20% of all the cruise missiles it has stockpiled. Smart bombs, like the one shown in a precision attack on Iraqi Air Force headquarters, can cost more than $100,000 apiece. The Sidewinder missile, which American pilots use against enemy aircraft, costs $50,000 each. The use of these expensive high-tech weapons in huge numbers during the first days of war has analysts estimating the conflict is costing $500 million a day. That could double, they say, with a land war. The Pentagon, however, declines to estimate the dollar cost.
It's simply a very difficult thing to calculate. I don't think we have any very solid figures.
It is difficult because part of what is being expended in the Gulf represents the hundreds of billions spent during the Reagan administration to create vast stockpiles of tanks, planes, and conventional ammunition. Some of what is being expended or lost, like older Navy planes, may never be replaced if plans hold to shrink the military because of the end of the Cold War. But some military contractors will benefit.
My expectation is we'll have to replace the more sophisticated munitions. We will use a lot of them. They're very effective. And we will have very small stocks when we're done because we never had a large stock to begin with.
Those sophisticated weapons are made by a relatively small number of companies, and most analysts don't expect a short war to bring a big surge to the defense industry as a whole. Bob Jamieson, ABC News, New York.
All the questions of technology. On the subject of casualties, Pentagon briefers today decline to estimate them. When we continue with the second half of this expanded edition of World News Tonight, we'll talk to our national security correspondent, John McWethy. In other news, the Soviet crackdown in the Baltics is awakening fears that Mr. Gorbachev's reforms are dying on the vine. And we'll have a report tonight about reporting the war.
Tonight on Nightline with Ted Koppel, A Nightmare Revisited. POWs paraded across American television screens. The impact on our national consciousness tonight.
Hi, I'm Bob Mueller. At Channel 2 News, we're on your side. We're committed to bringing you news and information that can help you. Now we're starting a new feature that will help you deal with everyday consumer issues. All you have to do is write a letter explaining your problem. Send it to 2 on Your Side, P.O. Box 2, Nashville, Tennessee, 37202. Then we'll work with you to find a solution. At Channel 2 News, we're on your side.
It was 1966 when a few dedicated people had a far-fetched idea about treating alcoholics. No one believed they could do it. But with the gift of land and the gift of grace, Cumberland Heights was born. Now, more than 2 decades later, it continues as the area's most respected alcohol and drug treatment center. And still today, the only investment it ever makes is in you.
Hi, I'm John Clark. When it comes to consumer goods and services, I'm in your corner. Join me on Consumer Corner, only on Channel 2 News at 6.
Call 259 WKRN for updates on the Gulf War.
From ABC, our special 1-hour edition of World News Tonight with Peter Jennings continues.
As the air war campaign continued against Iraq and occupied Kuwait today, Saddam Hussein turned down a Soviet proposal of last week for ending the war, telling Mikhail Gorbachev, "You are talking to the wrong person." Radio Baghdad says that Mr. Gorbachev proposed a ceasefire to be followed by an Iraqi withdrawal from Kuwait. President Hussein said today, "This message of yours should be addressed to the house of the oppressor. Bush," he said, "committed the aggression and must pay the price." As for other serious efforts to end the fighting through the diplomatic process, there aren't any. ABC's John McWethy is at the State Department.
Iraq's highest-ranking diplomat in Washington was again summoned to the State Department. It's the only official channel that remains open between Baghdad and Washington, and the two sides used it today to complain about abuses each side is now claiming. For the U.S., it is treatment of prisoners of war. For the Iraqis, it is America's air war, which they claim is killing women and children.
These civilians, sites, and people in Iraq were being damaged and killed as if the people in Iraq are coming from the outer space.
There was no talk from either side about stopping the fighting, but other countries are beginning to push the idea.
I think there's a consensus that there should be a pause in the bombing and fresh efforts should be made for a political settlement.
The foreign minister of Iran, Ali Akbar Velayati, said today he was trying to coordinate an effort by the non-aligned nations to stop the war. And from Spain, Egypt, and Algeria come reports of stepped-up diplomacy. An ABC News Washington Post poll found that 56% of those surveyed in the U.S. said now is not the time for peace talks with Iraq. 42% said the U.S. should try to start such talks. Regardless of what the public or other countries want, if there is going to be any realistic effort to stop the fighting, Iraq and the U.S. are going to have to show some interest. Thus far, neither country has. Peter?
Jack, some people are reminded how long it took to get a policy to get out of Vietnam, and it's at the State Department people should at least be working on a so-called extrication policy, how to get out of this war, are they?
Certainly the State Department is working on what the post-war Gulf is going to look like, but on an actual extrication policy, Peter, I don't detect that at this point.
Well, give us a hint of what they think it's going to look like at this point.
Well, certainly one of the concerns is how the war is actually going to end, and that is going to determine what some of the aspects of the post-war Gulf are going to look like. For example, if Saddam Hussein survives, then there's going to have to be a much tougher security regime that remains. If Saddam Hussein is gone, then a different approach can be taken.
Okay, John McCarthy of the State Department, thank you very much. As of now, it is prosecuting the war and American ground forces in Saudi Arabia. We're moving again today, heading north towards the border with Kuwait. Today it was elements of the 1st U.S. Infantry Division moving forth. Of all the comments we have heard from soldiers and Marines and even airmen going north, we were particularly impressed today by one Marine general who briefed his troops on what to expect once the fighting starts.
Here are some things that you ought to be aware of, that you're going to see in combat.
Frontline Marines with their general near the Kuwaiti border.
Nobody ever shared with me the things that would have made it easier for me to have done the job that I had to do in combat. So I vowed to God that if I survived the tours in Vietnam, that I would never pass up the opportunity to talk to warriors about combat leadership.
You can train for many things, he says, but not for the confusion that is inevitable in war.
And lots of Marines say, well, wait a minute, this doesn't apply to me. Combat is going to be kind of like our training exercises where everything works, everything happens the way it's supposed to be. You know, you plan it all out and everything works the way it was all intended. And I have to tell you, combat isn't like that at all. Combat is absolute chaos. Combat is Murphy's Law. Everything that can go wrong will go wrong at the worst possible moment.
As for how to handle the shock of battle, he asked them to remember one word, a word Marines don't use very often.
Love. And love is what you use in order to overcome the feelings of fear, which are natural. Sometimes I got to really prompt guys, and I say, what'll cause a woman, a mother, to run out 98 pounds, pick up an automobile off her child? Love. What'll cause a Marine to jump on a hand grenade, killing himself in order to save his fellow Marines? Love.
And then he tells them why Marines fight, why they have always fought.
I have to tell you, they don't fight for the country. They don't fight for the Marine Corps. They don't fight for apple pie, motherhood, Sally Lou, or Lost Overshoe, Iowa. They fight for their buddies. They fight for their buddies.
Our reporter there again was ABC's Bill Rediker. In our next segment, the fear of flying prompting severe cutbacks at the airlines and very much upsetting some civilians. Fears that the clock is being turned back on the Soviet Union and bringing the Gulf battlefield right into the American living room.
Hello. I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm having a dinner party and I've run out of coffee.
Come in.
Thank you.
Would Taster's Choice be too good for your guests?
Oh, I think they could get used to it.
Could they?
Yes.
Savor the sophisticated taste
of Taster's Choice.
Have you met your new neighbor yet? Oh, I've popped in for coffee.
A lot of you insist on eating wheat thins and oat thins because they taste good. But the whole idea behind these crackers is that you can eat them without feeling guilty. That's why they're baked, not fried. I mean, eat them because they're delicious, and you miss the whole point.
Milk-Bone dog biscuits, dog treats, and flavor snacks. Happy Valentine's Day.
It's a comfort to know more people have taken Sominex over the past 30 years than any other sleep aid. Safe, simple Sominex.
Had it up to here with antacid taste.
Then get great flavor up to here with extra strength Maalox Plus Cherry Cream. Up to here with mint cream. Up to here with lemon Swiss cream.
Maalox, you're the best.
It's the strongest, best tasting antacid.
The Gulf crisis may be expensive, but some people profit. Last fall, the price of unleaded, regular gasoline was as much as $1.45 per gallon, you will surely remember. Today, the oil companies began reporting their profits for the last 3 months of 1990. Here's ABC's Stephen Ogg.
Amoco says profits rose 69% during the final 3 months of last year from the same period a year earlier. It is the first of the major oil companies to report its final profits for 1990. But the others are expected to report sharp increases as well. Kenneth Durr is the chairman of Chevron.
When you're in the oil business and the price of oil increases to $32, you're going to make more money.
In fact, the price of a barrel of oil last quarter ranged from $25 to about $40, and it averaged $10 a barrel higher than the same quarter a year ago, as traders in oil markets, fearful about future oil supplies, kept bidding prices higher. All the big oil companies made so much money just extracting oil from the ground that this more than made up for the lower demand for refined products. Still, consumer activists accuse them of profiteering.
We have a crisis in the Persian Gulf. There's little competition at the refining level, and the companies can basically seize on the opportunity of rising prices to make money at both ends.
Oil prices have come down sharply since the war broke out, mainly because oil traders see a short war ahead, and there's plenty of oil available. If that trend continues, oil company profits could come down as well. Stephen Ogg, ABC News, Washington.
On Wall Street today, the Dow Jones Industrials lost 17.5 points to close at 26.29, and the trading was slow. President Bush has moved to make things just a little bit financially easier for the troops in the Gulf. He has formally declared the area a combat zone. That may seem a bit silly, but it means the troops will get extra time to pay their taxes, and at least some of their military pay will now be tax exempt. The Gulf War is causing a lot of people to put off travel overseas, and that's causing a lot of pain at the nation's airlines. Today, TWA was forced to take drastic steps, and here's ABC's Chris Bury.
TWA plans to cut international service by up to half and lay off pilots and flight attendants because business is so bad. Japan Airlines reported 700 cancellations within a day of the first American attack. At Iberia of Spain, traffic is down 30% since the war began.
It's having a lot of impact on the traveler's confidence, particularly to Europe and the Eastern Mediterranean. In Europe, we're seeing our bookings down as much as half, the Eastern Mediterranean over 90%.
Airlines blame the massive cancellations on one basic concern: terrorists.
Well, I was nervous getting into the plane, more so than I normally would be.
I wouldn't have gone if it was up to me. Unfortunately, it wasn't. It was up to my superiors.
Business travel is down, too, because many American corporations have canceled or restricted international trips. Ford Motor Company, for example, has banned all travel outside North America for the first time in its history. Many airlines will issue credit or relax penalties to travelers who cancel their flights because of events in the Middle East. Even with improved security at American airports, the war has dampened domestic travel. One reason, many Americans don't want to be away from their families.
It's just a time when I'd like to be home.
Ironically, that is also why planes still fly to the Middle East. Last night's El Al flight from New York to Tel Aviv was crowded with Israelis who said they wanted to go home despite the danger. Chris Bury, ABC News, Chicago.
Well, as you know, this was a national holiday on the home front, the chance for Americans to think about a very long struggle of a different order. At ceremonies today honoring Dr. Martin Luther King, some of his followers advocated a peaceful solution to the problems of the Gulf. Many have friends and relatives on duty in the Gulf. Every night we try to listen to some American voices on the subject of the war. Tonight, ABC's Tom Foreman is in the neighborhood around Martin Luther King Boulevard in Denver.
At the King Baptist Church, people are praying every day, just as they have since the war began, praying for peace, praying for strength.
If a family member or friend of yours is in the Persian Gulf right now, won't you step forward?
Fully half the congregation finds itself with family or friends in the war.
Suddenly you can see the impact that this Middle East crisis have had on this church.
It is a measure of the impact on this community. The war is all anyone talks about, in the supermarket, in the record store, in the beauty parlor.
They're worried about the people that are over there, and they're hoping that everybody gets back safe.
The houses where the soldiers came from are where the tension is felt most.
This is Jimmy right here.
At Jimmy Truesdale's home, family gatherings are times to look through old photos of better days. The soldier's wife and son have moved in with his parents, but that does not make the family feel complete. It does not take away the worry.
Every once in a while, that feeling comes when you realize you don't know what may happen.
I don't know where he is, so Heavenly Father may be in a foxhole, but he's somewhere there.
The Truesdales, like a lot of families in this neighborhood, are strongly religious. That helps much of the time.
This is an ABC News special report, and we'll bring.
But when a war bulletin comes up, the entire community stops, waiting and watching until it is over.
Standing on the outside, looking, it can be so lonely.
The people in this neighborhood are trying to go on with life as normal, knowing full well it is not. Trying to keep the pressures of war from taking too heavy of a toll, knowing that can defeat them long before any enemy ever could.
That's my daddy. He misses daddy a lot, too.
Tom Foreman, ABC News, Denver.
We'll have more news in just a moment.
Ford Probe, for those who'd rather be driving.
Have you driven a Ford lately?
Flu outbreak in 29 states. And it's spreading fast. What can you do? Doctors recommend Theraflu, hot liquid medicine that works fast. Theraflu, strong therapy for flu symptoms.
You know, that sign wasn't up there for more than 3 days. And bingo.
I've never seen a house move so fast. I've never seen a real estate outfit move so fast.
We're prepared to get the results you're looking for. The Prudential, you know us, we know real estate.
It's there in the way an officer smiles, in the way a steward remembers your name, a kindness that comes easily, a genuine warmth, service that is truly a step above. Come, and for a week or so, allow yourself to be absolutely spoiled by the people of Holland America, who've made us the best cruise line in the world.
Earlier in the broadcast, we heard from one refugee from Baghdad who said the city is short of food because of the American bombing. Many Europeans with memories of other wars are apparently worried that they too could soon experience food shortages because of what is happening in the Gulf. Here's ABC's Jim Bitterman with an explanation.
In Belgium, France, and Italy, 2,000 miles from the front lines, supermarkets have been under siege. Since before the Gulf War began, there have been sporadic runs on cooking oil, flour, sugar, and other staples, which sometimes disappear as quickly as new supplies arrive. For no good reason, shoppers have reacted to the war by hoarding. One store reported sales of rice 5 times normal, another 3 times normal sales of sugar. Never mind that the products people are stockpiling are often produced domestically and not at all in short supply. Why are you taking 10 packages of sugar? One French shopper yelled at another the other day. That's how you create a panic. But for some, especially for those who remember World War II, war means shortages.
It's an irrational behavior. People are still a little anxious that the situation could relapse into that with memories of the Second World War.
In Italy, one man was arrested for buying a ton of sugar. And in some places, authorities have restricted the sale of containers for gasoline, afraid people will begin to store it in large quantities. Even more dangerous, perhaps, is the run on guns. In southern France, gun stores were selling arms at such a rate that the French government stepped in to limit the purchase of some kinds of shotguns and rifles. Europeans' fears, officials hope, will eventually diminish when people realize there's no reason for anxiety so far from the war. Jim Bitterman, ABC News, Paris.
There is news in other parts of the world today. In the Soviet Union, the Baltic Republic of Latvia says it will create its own volunteer militia to defend itself against the Soviet military. 5 Latvians died yesterday when Soviet troops using machine guns stormed a government building in Riga, the capital. It is but one of the incidents in the Soviet Union now which suggests that any further political liberalization is being fiercely resisted in the Kremlin. Here's ABC's Jim Laurie.
The bloodshed in the Baltics is but the most shocking sign of a deepening political struggle. The evidence so far is that Mikhail Gorbachev has joined the army, the KGB, the hardliners to turn back the clock toward political repression.
I think we need to take a step back to the days of Andropov 6 years ago and restore state power.
One by one, the progressives in Gorbachev's government are quitting. Foreign Minister Edward Shevardnadze last month, and apparently 7 more this month, including Gorbachev's key economic advisors, like Stanislav Shatalin and Nikolai Petrikov, plus old allies like Alexander Yakovlev. A struggle has also developed with the media. The Kremlin has canceled the Popular Viewpoint program and denounced liberal newspapers.
Our program feels it has been taken off the air for political reasons.
But refusing to submit, the press, like the Baltics, is fighting back.
This is a civil war, and these Baltic republics, they'll never give in. We will never give in. My program, my journalists, they don't want to live under a dictator.
The euphoria of less than a year ago, when the nation was voting for freely elected parliaments, has now turned to fear that many of those parliaments could be dissolved by emergency decrees from Gorbachev enforced by the army. Boris Yeltsin has emerged as the last powerful champion of reform. He warned today at his Russian parliament that the nation had taken a reactionary turn. The drift toward dictatorship, he said, is real. To show there is still life left in the democratic movement, tens of thousands took to the streets here yesterday, demanding Gorbachev resign. As Boris Yeltsin put it, the struggle is not yet over, but it has reached a critical stage. Jim Laurie, ABC News, Moscow.
President Bush has again called on the Soviet leadership to stop using force in the Baltics, although he did not mention Mikhail Gorbachev by name. As we have reported on a couple of occasions, the government of China has been cracking down on dissent while the world's attention is focused elsewhere. At least 24 political dissidents who took part in the democracy movement have been tried or sentenced this month alone. And today, China ordered 7 foreign human rights activists who wanted to attend the trials to leave the country. We'll be back in just a moment.
Own a foreign car, Midas has the right brake parts in stock for practically every foreign car. And our brake technicians are trained experts, so we do the job right and right away. For foreign car brakes, nobody beats Midas. Nobody.
Painful sore throat and no Chloraseptic spray? That's okay. Chloraseptic lozenges actually work like the spray to penetrate nerve endings and stop pain fast. Great tasting Chloraseptic lozenges. Fast relief when you're away from your spray.
When Carol and Bill came to me looking for a bigger house, of course I told them about the changes in the real estate market. When it moves in a new direction, it's like a change in the wind. You have to move with it. At Realty World, we saw the changes coming. We have the latest techniques to help buyers and sellers stay on the right tack. That's the Realty World approach. The wind changes, and we're ready for it. It worked for Carol and Bill. A good chart will get you where you want to go.
Now more than ever, the right agent makes all the difference in the world. Realty World.
Finally this evening, the war live in the living room, or at least live some of the time and some of the war. The immediacy of coverage in this war is unprecedented, and it raises questions of fairness, accuracy, and ethics. Here's ABC's Chief Jeff Greenfield.
Throughout the entire sky, there are flashes of light.
And then we just heard, whoa, holy cow. That was a large airburst that we saw.
It has been a TV war literally from the beginning.
Special report on the
with live moments of chilling danger.
And Dean, go ahead and put your gas mask on, please.
I'm looking at this monitor. I see windows open. They must be closed.
Bill, it's your call, whatever you want to do anytime. You want to stay or do you want to go?
With the public learning of events almost at the same instant reporters do.
This is the headquarters of the Air Force, and keep your eye on all sides of the building as the airplane overflies the building.
Everybody in every living room in America is participating in the war, and that's just never happened before.
But participating in what? With a massive media deployment, with censorship on all sides, and with little combat to cover, the hunger for information has led to speculation among reporters and experts, and to on-air responses to the first sign of any action.
Well, Diane, the sirens are wailing at an air base and in the town.
Instant access, of course, means that the editorial process that usually happens off-screen now happens on the air, including the transmission and correction of inaccuracies, no matter where the public turns.
There have been 4 blasts that I counted here. We have a report from one of our cameramen of 7 in the Jerusalem area.
There were no hits in Jerusalem. That is, no hits in Jerusalem.
20 nerve gas victims taken to a Tel Aviv area hospital. We should discount our earlier report about nerve gas. I apologize.
When people see this much information, they must assume that we all know everything right away, and the fact is that we don't. You have to be willing to say, we're not sure, and there's been too little willingness to do that in some cases.
When the first audio tapes of captured Allied pilots were offered by Iraq, followed later by TV images, CNN reviewed the tapes and aired them unedited. CBS and NBC aired excerpts. ABC decided not to use those portions where the pilots appeared to make statements against their will. Different standards reflecting different opinions of where news stopped and propaganda began. So far, these issues have arisen in a war that's been fought almost entirely with American air power. But should a huge ground war develop with infinitely more carnage, then the issue of what to show and how to show it will become infinitely more painful. Jeff Greenfield, ABC News, New York.
It is 5 days now since this war began. Iraq said today that Allied airmen it has taken prisoner, including 3 Americans at least, will be held at some potential Iraqi targets. American aircraft have downed or shot down another Iraqi airplane today and have also lost one more. And Americans have also rescued a pilot who was lost in the desert. Wasn't know what had happened to him, but he was rescued by Americans. Iraq has fired another Scud missile at Saudi Arabia today. It landed in the Persian Gulf. That is our report on World News Tonight. We will continue with Persian Gulf reports every hour on the hour, and we shall be here if other news breaks out. I'm Peter Jennings. Good night.
This is Channel 2 News.
Good evening, I'm Cindy Benson.
And I'm Bob Mueller. In our news tonight, Nashvillians celebrated the birth of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. But that celebration led to problems for a downtown mall. The Church Street Center closed early after hundreds of young marchers left the celebration and crowded into the mall. Channel 2's Melissa Penry reports police advised mall management to shut down to avoid any danger.
Hundreds of youths poured out of the doors at Church Street Center early this afternoon under orders from Metro Police. The mall closed because of the overwhelming number of people there. The teens say they had taken part in the march downtown honoring Dr. Martin Luther King, but apparently they didn't stay for the entire ceremony.
They don't want to just sit there and listen to a whole bunch of lectures. The kids were not doing anything. And if they're going to close the mall, they need to make everybody come out, and not just the black children that are out here just to have fun.
There was just a lot of people just crowded all through the mall, and you know, I don't know if they were really starting fights or anything, but they were harassing people, and so the police came and threw everybody out.
Mall management decided to close for the rest of the day under advice from Metro Police to avoid a potentially dangerous situation.
And it was just such an overwhelming crowd